Okay. Anyone got any particular question that's burning a hole in the pocket? Okay, well, I'll cover the things I was planning to cover. So let me start with the disclaimer. So should be able to see my screen, and this is a new message screen, and you can see right above my signature line I have this disclaimer. I have not verified any of the information contained in those documents that were prepared by other people. And add this to your signature line somewhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be in this location, but I have it right there. And that's because when you're sending documents that may have been prepared by third parties, we're saying we're disclaiming that we verified that information. And so our broker risk management folks have given us this language. Copy it down and put it in your signature lines. And I know I just got a note from Sherry that she added it to her signature line, and it's making her feel a lot better. So any questions on that? Okay. You need that language next time you get an email from me, which is a couple times a week at least. Look for it in my email and you just copy it from there. All right. This may be basic for some folks, but I'm going to cover, we get a lot of data in our business, and it comes in different forms. So I'm going to talk about the difference between, I'm going to close this here, close that there, median prices and average prices, because you know it all kind of has to do with how we address things. Let me see if I can move this. Okay. So I'm looking here. This is a chart we prepare, and see if I can move it down. Let me stop share a minute. Okay. So see if I get this up again. Okay, here we are in Napa Valley, or Napa County. And you can see this particular chart that we prepare, and shows the different communities and the sold homes, the number of sold homes last year and the number of sold homes this year, and the percent change. That's going to be pretty standard. The average days to sell, that's going to be a pretty standard calculation. This is comparing year over year. Now, this says the median sold price versus this year versus the median sold price last year, and the percent change. So in this case, it's showing that the median price in 2023 was $847,500, and in 2022, in January, it was $850. So it's slightly down on a year over year basis. Then that's the median price. And how do you get the median price? You take the middle price of all the homes that sold. So you take the highest is the top limit, and the lowest is the low limit, and you just go to the middle, and it's $847.50. So that's good for most purposes. And I'm going to stop sharing that one and pull up a different one. Okay. Now, this is a chart that I do for my blog. It's in the blog, but it's also in the articles I write for the different newspapers. This one goes for the distinctive properties, but this is Napa County statistics. And this line here, sales down, price up, supply up, down, is a month-to-month thing. So the sales were down on a month-to-month basis. The median price was up on a month-to-month basis. The supply was down on a month-to-month basis. And then existing home sales were 27% down year over year. And this total sales volume, that's the total volume of all homes sold, was down 17% year over year. Now this shows the average price. Remember that median price was $850, but the average price of all the homes sold in the last 12 months was $1,427,000. And that was actually up 12% over the year before, 12-month average. So you can see this is quite a different number when you take the average, and that's when you take all the homes that sold and divide by the number of homes that sold, and you just don't take the median. So this is a number that if we track regularly, which I do, and I publish, and so this will really show the market's a little more healthier than that last graph said. So if you're using and sending out these graphs, they're tools you can use just to understand, what they're saying. And if you have any question about that, let me know. But you can get quite a different picture of the market conditions of looking at one number, a median price versus an average price, particularly in our wine country markets where the prices are so different. The median could be spread because we had really high numbers. And when you look at the average number, those highs and lows get kind of balanced out a little better. So any questions on that? Okay, good. Basic math. Go ahead, Sherry.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I was just recapping on the last meeting we had. You mentioned, but when you like for floor duty and things like that, going about just sort of this sheet, you don't talk in terms of median price, right?
Not in Sonoma, because that median can be skewed by a few sales at the low end or a fewer sales at the high end. So Sonoma is and Napa are such diverse markets that I really don't think the median price is really relevant. The average price it kind of gives us a better picture of that market, those marketplaces. Something like Sonoma County, where you have a much bigger spread, a bigger pool of properties, I think you can use a median pretty safely. And it probably won't differ much from the average. But you could see in that Napa number that the average was quite different than the median.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the reason why. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. An issue came up in the past week that agent received offer. We were the listing agent and received an offer on a property that had been on the market for a while and hadn't received any offers. And it was kind of the lowest offer that the seller was willing to consider. And the seller asked us to, well, I'll accept that offer, but ask the buyer's agent to ask the buyer to pay the buyer's agent. And so the question came up, well, can we put that in the counter offer from our seller to the buyer that The buyer's agent shall pay the buyer's commission. Now, remember, all commissions are negotiable. That's rule number one. That's pointed out multiple places in our literature, in our documents. However, if the property is in the MLS and we're making a offer of compensation to a cooperating agent, which in the BERA system is called a BSO or a CSO, commission to selling office. If we put in there 3%, that's a unilateral offer of a commission payment to the cooperating agent. And when I say unilateral, it means we can't change it because we've already published it. So we can't go back and counter in that way with the seller saying we want the buyer's agent to pay the buyer's commission. What we can do is in this case, that commission, or let's say the commission is $5,000 that was going to go to the cooperating agent. We can tell our seller, well, we can't specifically ask the buyer's agent to pay the buyer's commission, but we could increase the price by counter the price at $5,000 higher. And that essentially does the same thing, gives you the $5,000 to pay the buyer's agent. So that's how we handle that sort of thing. So if there's now the buyer's agent, if you had a private conversation with that buyer's agent and they agreed not to accept what was offered in the MLS, I wouldn't even trust that, because that offer of compensation goes through the broker. And without that agent's broker, or that selling agent's broker agreeing to that, we don't really have an agreement. So you all, as partners with the broker, can't unilaterally change what's offered in the MLS as compensation, because that's offered from a broker to a broker. Okay. Yes. Okay. Question in the chat box. When clients ask if home prices are going up or down, how best to answer? Well, anyone got an idea? What do you say when someone asks you, how's the market? What are the prices doing? What's your answer? Somebody's got an answer, right?
Depends on the price point and the location.
There you go. It depends, right? It depends. It depends on the location. It depends on what price the property is being offered at. Are we seeing multiple offers in some circumstances still? Did you get multiple offers on your property, Eric?
No, not multiple.
Okay. Rob, I'm sorry I cut you off. What was your comment?
Yeah, Heather and I received 6 offers on Wild Rose about 2 weeks ago.
There you go. So speak from your personal experience. Now that you know that Rob and Heather got 6 offers on a property a few weeks ago, someone asks you, what a price is doing, you can say, well, in our firm, we had one offer that got 6, we got one property that had 6 offers in a couple of weeks ago. And then we have other properties that have been on the market 200 days or more. So as Eric said, wisely, it all depends on the price point and the location and all the other circumstances surrounding that individual home. Anybody want to add anything more there? Okay, thanks for the question. We have a form that came up last week. We had a buyer, we have a potential buyer working with one of our agents, and that potential buyer does not speak, their primary language is Spanish, and their understanding of English is limited. So what do we want to do in that case? We want to work with another agent who's fluent in Spanish. That's one option. Bring someone in. We have multiple agents within the firm that are fluent in Spanish. Or we want to make sure that that client has someone who can translate for them. So in this case, the clients have a daughter who is bilingual. And so we suggested the daughter come to the meeting to discuss the offer and assist with the translations. So there's a form we can use. And it's called the ITA, the Interpreter Translator Agreement. There's also a separate practice tip that Broker Risk Management has on this matter of translations. But essentially, they're telling us, yes, get someone to translate and then verify, have that person verify, have all the parties verify that they've got a translator and that translator is doing certain things. So this form identifies the parties and the property. So here the daughter, as the interpreter translator, has been appointed by the principal, their parents, for the purpose of providing interpretation and translation service relating to the principal's real estate activity described as below. In this case, they were going to be a buyer for a property located at, and you could use a specific property address, or you could just say Napa County. Well, I guess I won't let me say Napa County. Let's see if it will here. County. Yeah, Napa County. So you could be general about the location because you haven't settled on one particular property yet, perhaps. And then the interpreter representations. The interpreter fluently speaks and writes English, and then also fluently and writes Spanish, you would put there in this case. And then the interpreter is informed that the principal is fluent in language number 2, but not fluent in English. And the principal prefers information related to the real estate transaction to be interpreted, translated to English to language 2, Spanish. Interpreter and translator is at least 18 years old. So don't choose a 13-year-old to do this. I don't know why 18 is the magic number, but that's what this form says. You could have a paid translator, I guess. In this case, we were not having a paid translator. They are certified or registered, probably not. If they're registered or certified, and they're registered. So I guess you could be a certified translator. I'm not familiar with that. And you get a number for that. So you put that in. Here, the interpreter is a blood relative to the principal. And if not, how are they related? You would put that in there. Neighbor, friend, whatever. Describe how or if at all the interpreter knows the principal or broker. So you put that in there. So this is another CYA form as far as brokers are concerned. Of course, you know what CYA means. Because it says the broker is entitled and shall rely solely on the interpreter with regard to all communication involving the principal. And the principal shall rely solely on the interpreter with regard to communication involving the broker. So, and then you would fill this out and the interpreter signs it, the principal signs it, and the broker and agent sign it, or just the agent signs it on behalf of the broker. So that's what you do when you're using an interpreter. Any questions on that? Okay. So I think in the circumstance we had last week when this was going on, that all kind of seemed to work out okay. And the dialogue is ongoing. They wrote an offer, which was incomplete in some respects, but they're continuing to talk about purchasing a property. Shannon asked, do we have a base of interpreters we can choose from? Not that I'm aware of, Shannon. It doesn't come up a whole lot, but certainly on this training here alone, we have Alejandro, who's fluent in Spanish. We have Ana, who's fluent in Spanish. And so there are folks to reach out to. If you reach out to me, I'll put you in touch with them and they can assist. And whether they don't want to be the interpreters per se themselves. That's not their job. They aren't certified or licensed to do that. But they would help through the process of finding the right interpreter for a transaction. Okay. Thanks for your question. Okay. We have a situation where Alejandro says he will always help with Spanish. So thank you, Alejandro. Let's see, we have a situation where the seller of a property is an entity, a corporation, a housing corporation, actually bought a property. They were going to build a home on it that was going to serve their purposes as a nonprofit. And they bought the land, they did certain improvements to the land, and then they stopped and said, I don't know the reason they stopped. They didn't have the funding, or they decided to go a different direction, but they decided to sell the property. So our agent bought in a buyer for the property. And there had been improvements made to the home, or not the home, there was no home, but improvements made to the property. And our buyer wanted to be assured that there were no liens and unpaid contractors that had done work on the property and hadn't been paid. So we asked the seller about that, and the seller actually provided us with a form that we hadn't seen before. Let me click out of this and go to this. And they call it an owner's affidavit. Now, this might have been provided by the title company. I'm not sure. But we sent it off to our legal counsel to review. And I think they gave a stamp of approval on it. So this is an owner's affidavit. And the owner is certifying that they own the property. In this case, it was vacant land. That there's actually access to the property, said land. We have had properties that are landlocked. And even though the lot legally exists, it doesn't have access to a street, things like that. So this says that there is actual pedestrian and vehicular access to the property. That there have been no repairs, work, or improvement or materials furnished to the permits within the last 90 days. So there's nothing that's been done there, or if there were, they would state it. There are no unpaid bills for labor or material on the property. There's no one in possession or has access to the property other than, and then they would check the appropriate box. No, they're again making this affidavit that no other person other than those mentioned above had any rights, easements, licenses, or agreements allowing them to use, encroach on, or travel over said real property, except And then they would say none. If that's true, there might be a PG&E easement or some other kind of right-of-way easement that someone could put in there. The seller's saying that to our knowledge, there are no existing violation of city or county ordinances. This affidavit is given for the purpose of inducing North Coast Title and Stewart Title to issue its policy. So this was provided by the title insurance company. And then it talks about the supplemental tax bill. And then it's signed by the organization and notarized. So this is a nice affidavit for the buyer to have, and it's actually for the purpose of the title company, as they say, being induced to write a title policy. Oh, sorry, you didn't see the form. Let me try it again. Let's see, it's over here. Okay. Can you see the form now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Sherry. Sorry, I didn't have this up before, but I read through it pretty well, everything it covers. And it pertains to that certain escrow number and title number and so forth. So we told our agent, besides running it by our legal counsel, we told them to discuss it with the title officer, to make sure the title company, title officer was fine with it. And we talked about this before. There's a couple folks at on the title side of the business, and then you should form these as part of your partnership, your team. You identify the escrow officer you like to work with. Not that we can't work with any escrow officer, but in particular, you may have a favorite. That's always okay. And then the escrow officer is the one who handles the actual paperwork, the escrow, takes the funds and, makes sure all the paperwork is in order. The one who underwrites the title insurance, which we use in our state to insure the title, is known as the title officer. So when you get your prelim, it's going to show there's a title escrow officer and then there's a title officer. Well, if you have a question about what's on the title prelim, you can ask your escrow officer, but they're going to ask the title officer. So it's okay for us to call the title officer because they're listed there and their phone number's there, and talk over those things with the title officer. So in that case, we suggest to our agent that they talk directly to the title officer and get clarity that this form covers what our client, the buyer, was looking for. Cheryl put in the chat, I have an REO that has solar panels and are trying to find out who owns them. The seller sent a letter to the company that financed them to remove them and repair the holes. This is the first for me. I would assume they're leased then. What are my thoughts? I don't know. Don't like that word assume, you know how they assume is spelled, right? So it would be interesting to look at the prelim and see if there is a recorded lease or a recorded a lien by someone for those solar panels. Usually if there's a long-term lease, the solar company would record a memorandum of the lease. So it would show up on the title. So the property could not be sold unless it was sold with that lease in place. If the buyer didn't want the solar panels, then the seller might have the option to cancel the lease, but that would depend on the language in the lease. We have one right now, a different transaction where the buyer, there is a leased solar panel. The buyer has asked the seller as part of the negotiations to acquire, to pay off that lease, so that the solar panels are owned free and clear with the house. And the seller agreed. So there must be a buyout provision in that particular lease that the seller can go to the title or the solar company and say, okay, I want to buy out my system, buy out the lease. It's just like you would buy out a lease in a car. You know, if you lease a car and at the end of the lease term, you want to buy the car, the leasing company makes it available to you at a certain price. So the same kind of theory applies to solar panels. I know my solar panels were financed by the county. The county has a very good system, the county of Sonoma, to underwrite the cost of solar and solar batteries, actually backup batteries. And at a very, very favorable rate, I think it was 4.5% or something like that. And they attach it to your tax bill. So my tax bill went up a little bit, but now when I pay the taxes, I'm also paying off the solar panels. So when I go to sell my place, I'll have to disclose that the solar panels have been financed by a county program. Then that's included in the tax data, you know, and it's itemized actually on the tax bill. So I don't know if there's, I don't even know if there's an option to buy that out. Perhaps there is. Just pay off the financing. So there's different things, but they'll show up in your prelim if they're a lien against the property. If you've got solar panels on the property and nothing shows up in the prelim, then you know the buyer is going to buy them not subject to anybody else's lien on those solar panels. Okay. Any questions about that or that seller's affidavit I was talking about? It's not typical to get that kind of seller's affidavit for a single family home that exists. It would only be like a new construction or partially constructed place. Like in this case, there was a vacant land with some improvements that have been done. And then that title company is going to want to know there's no pending liens because mechanics liens, as you know from your real estate education stuff, mechanics liens kind of jump to the front of the line. So they jump over loans and they jump over other vendors and or other liens. And so title companies don't want to insure against that in a typical situation. Okay, any questions there? All right. My last topic of the day has to do with the dual agency weekly practice tips that we're getting. I think we're through week 4 of 5 of those from broker risk management. And they're all very helpful. Talk about, you know, various aspects of dual agency. And I hope you're tracking on those. If not, you can go back and to the broker risk management website and put in dual agency, and all those weekly practice tips will be there. But yeah, dual agency is a critical part of our business because it's where most of our lawsuits stem around some dual agency or lack of disclosure of dual agency or lack of disclosure of material facts and things like that. So the dual agency is a big one. And we need to be particularly attentive to what the agency disclosures say and how we operate with our clients. So please pay attention to those dual agency weekly practice tips. Heather let me know she's sick. She's under the weather, so she's not on today. I do want to promote her upcoming Brian Buffini 100 Days of Greatness program. This is both for new agents and agents who want a refresher. It's going to start March 6th. And it's a combination of online training and then live training. So Heather is a Brian Buffini trainer. So she's going to be our live trainer for this program. And I think she'll be doing that on Mondays, following the weekly sessions that are online. So there'll be a combination of online and live sessions. Heather will be sending out a preview of that program via YouTube channel that Brian Buffini has. And take a look at that because it's really good training. And it's great for our new agents as well as experienced agents who want refresher. It is, there is a commitment of cost to it. It's $395, I believe. The company will reimburse that if you finish the program and from your first closed escrow. And I think in the promo, it said in the 100 days, the people who've taken this, and there's been thousands who've taken this course. I think there was one closed sale. The average was one closed sale and 3 pending sales during that period. So that's a very high success rate. And it's certainly worth your consideration. If you have any questions about that, you can ask Heather or myself or Randy, and we'll give you our feedback. The other thing I want to remind you of is next week on, I think it is Wednesday, there is the training, the legal training, just confirm that. Yeah, it's on the 22nd at 9:30 to 11:30. There's the broker risk management session on buyer broker representation, buyer representation agreements. And as we've said before, I would think we're going to see more and more use of the buyer representation agreements. This will give us, those forms have been updated at CAR, and Bill and Shannon are going to take a deep dive into using the buyer representation agreement forms. So put that down on your calendar. That'll just be our regular a legal update, but specifically on buyer representation agreements next Wednesday. Okay, and that takes pre-registration. So if you haven't pre-registered, go ahead and sign up for it. I'll send out the link again. And get pre-registered. And if you are pre-registered, you won't be shut out of the session like happened before. They've got that figured out. Okay. That's all I have for today. Any questions? Anything I covered that you have questions about, or anything I didn't cover that you have questions about? Okay. Yeah, question. Verify the username for BRM. Okay, so the website is brokerriskmanagement.com. The username is BHGWCG, all caps. So it's BHGWCG. And the password is Bonita, I believe, with a capital B. So give that a try. Bonita is BONITA. And it's a great resource we have available to us for the weekly practice. All the weekly practice tips are there. Okay. All right. Well, it's good to see everybody. Quiet group today, but that's okay. And we'll carry on. Since we have the training in the middle of next week, we probably won't do the contract and tech training on Friday next week, but we'll carry it on in the following week. Okay. Check the emails, and I'll send this training out a little later on today with those links. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see y'all later. Bye.
Thank you.